Okay, hi guys, it's Mrs. Milson again. All right, we're going to talk about constructors. When we looked at our students class in the previous video, we saw our instance variables. Let's put some little notes in here. These are called our instance variables, and they are attributes and characteristics of our class. Okay, students, that's our class. Okay. Then we had one constructor down here that we used to construct or to create multiple objects or multiple instances of our student class. Now this constructor has every single variable in it, okay? It has a parameter that'll match to every single instance variable, okay? I'm going to create multiple constructors. We can create multiple constructors, and it's called overloading the constructors, as long as this information is different for every single constructor. Okay, this is the signature. As long as I don't have string, int, string, double in that same order, I can create any other kind of constructors. Okay, so let me come down here and let's create some other constructors. So we're going to create more, and they're called, when you have more than one, they're overloaded constructors. Okay. So to create a constructor, it's always public because you need to have access to it, and then the class name. That's it. Okay, so public students, and then inside the parentheses, we're going to put the parameters for what variables that we want to build. Now, we already have a constructor that has all the variables. Okay, let's build a constructor that doesn't have any variables. Okay, and what we're going to do in this constructor is we're going to set default values. Okay, now I am going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to copy this instead of retyping everything. So my first name, last name, ID, grade level, school, and GPA should all be the same. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to set these as default values. I'm going to delete the ID or the variable names from the old constructor because they're not in this constructor. There are no variables to reference. Okay, so what are some default values? A default for a string is null, which means it's empty. So all my string variables will be null. I believe ID and grade level were ints, so default value would be 0. And GPA was a double, so the default value would be 0, 0.0, whatever. Okay, so now when I use this constructor and I create a student, it's just going to be an empty shell. Okay, it's not going to have a name or an ID or a grade level. Okay, so let me compile this. Let's go over and create a student. Let's go back to our JCS students file. I cleaned this up a little bit, just put all my students right next to each other and printed them all out. If we go ahead and print this was what we did before. So I have my 3 students that I created with my original constructor that has all the variables in it. So now let's come down here and let's build a 4th student, but we'll use that overloaded constructor right here without any parameters, and there won't be anything in the student. It'll just be a blank. It'll be a blank one. Okay, so let's see, students. Let's see, this is student 4 equals new students. I'm not going to put anything in the parameters. Okay, I don't need this. So it's going to say, is there a constructor that doesn't have any parameters? Well, there is. And then they're all blank. So now if I, go back and fix that. Now if I print student 4, I shouldn't see any names. It should just say, it'll just have zeros and be null for the name. So there's nothing in the name, there's no ID, there's no grade, no school, and no GPA. Okay, so why would you want to do something like that? I don't know. We'll see things along the way where it's always nice to have like that standard or that blank constructor. Okay, all right, let's do another overloaded constructor. Let's do a constructor where we want to have it for a specific school and a specific grade and no GPA. So let's say it's for the high school. It'll be all ninth graders and they don't have a GPA. So I'm going to create another one. Again, public students. Okay, it's just public and the name of the class. Lower this a little bit. Now, a lot of this is exactly the same. Let me make the shell here and then we'll oops, wrong one. We'll copy and paste. Okay. What I want to do is instead of having to type in ninth grade JHS 0.0 every single time, I'm going to set these values inside the constructor. Okay. So all I really need is the name and the ID. Okay. So again, I am going to cheat a little bit and copy and paste this. Okay. From that constructor down to this one. And that's really all I want to enter in. So now when I come down here, I'm going to copy these just because they're right there. Why type when you don't have to? Okay, so the first name will look at F name. So I do want to point that to F name in the constructor. The last name will point to L name, so I'll change that. This ID will point to this ID, so I'm going to change that. Now, grade level, I want them all to be freshmen. The school will have them all be JHS. And like I said, freshmen, we do want the GPA to be 0.0. Again, they're coming in, they don't have a GPA. So you notice that this signature line is different. This only has 2 strings and 1 int. Okay, of course, this has nothing. And this signature line has 2 strings, 2 ints, a string, and a double. So my 3 constructors all have different signature lines, so they won't interfere with each other. I won't get any kind of errors. Okay, so let's compile. So now I'm going to create a student and just put their name, their first name, last name, and their ID. And then the system will know to use this constructor that they're all going to be ninth graders at Jefferson, okay, with no GPA. All right, so let's go ahead. Students, let's do student 5 equals new students. And this time I need to do first name, last name, and ID. So let's do John Wilson, and ID number of 6789. Okay, so now when I print student 5, and of course, if you don't mind, I'm going to put a blank line. I should just copy and paste that. I just like to have the spaces between. Now when I print student 5, John Wilson, it's going to tell me ninth grade at Jefferson with a GPA of 0.0 because it knows when it sees 2 strings and an ID to use this constructor, okay? It doesn't have enough to use this constructor. It doesn't have a grade level school and GPA, and it has too much to use this constructor, okay? So let's run it. To my window here. Okay, so those were let's scroll right here. Those were our original 3. And then there's my blank person. And there's my default ninth grader at Jefferson with no GPA. Okay, let's do one more of these just so you can see, and then we'll be done. Okay, so you can have multiple constructors, okay? Just make sure the signature line is, I keep forgetting the period. Okay, so let's just do one more. Student 6. And let's see. Mary Johnson. And I need an ID number. Let's do all 2s. And then I will print. And again, it knows, since I didn't put in a grade level or a GPA or a school, it knows that it should use that constructor where Mary Johnson's going to be a 9th grader at Jefferson with a 0.0 GPA to start. Okay. And there we go. There's our last two. There's our John Wilson from student 5, and there's our Mary Johnson from student 6. Okay? So again, if we look at our class file here, it's starting to get very big. Okay? We've got our class name. We have our instance variables, which again are the attributes and the characteristics of our class. And then we have 3 different constructors. We have overloaded constructors so that we can build students. We can build students or instances or objects of our students' class 3 different ways. I can build one by using every single variable, no variables, or 3 of the variables, and then the other 3 are filled in. Okay? All righty. See you next time.